What's this one called?
And now, Chapter 2 of Tracking a Thief.
Girls, Nancy said in a whisper, don't look now, but the woman who was on the plane just came out of our restaurant. I think that she was spying on us. Why would she do that? Bess asked. If she follows us, then I'll be convinced she's trying to find out what we're up to here in New Orleans, Nancy replied. To prove her point, the young sleuth turned down one street and then down another street. The woman did the same. I'm going to try something, Nancy said quietly. Two can play at this game. It was easy for the girls to dodge into 3 different shops as they rounded another corner. Their pursuer, confused, stood on the sidewalk for several seconds, then turned and walked back in the direction from which she had come. Cautiously, Nancy emerged, and then Bess, and then George. The girls trailed after the woman for several blocks. Though there were many pedestrians on the street, they were able to keep their quarry in sight. Apparently, she was in a hurry, for she walked quickly, not once slackening her pace. As they rounded a corner, she suddenly disappeared into an alley. Nancy darted forward just in time to see the woman enter a building. When she and her friends reached it, Bess was not in favor of continuing the search. Nancy insisted that the place was innocent-looking enough, and walked through the open arch. In the distance, the girls could hear low singing. They proceeded down a dimly lighted hall, and in a moment the girls stood beside the door beyond which the singing was coming. A placard on it read, Church of Eternal Harmony. Bess, intrigued, lost all of her fears and urged that they go inside. Nancy hesitated. At that moment, the door opened. A man with long white hair and a beard invited them to enter. Our admission is very reasonable, he said, smiling. Only $2 apiece. If the spirit speaks, your questions will be answered. Still, Nancy hesitated. She realized now that a séance was going on inside. Having no desire to spend $2 so foolishly, she was about to retreat when Bess walked boldly forward into the room beyond. George followed, and Nancy was forced to go along. After paying admission, they seated themselves on a bench near the door. The singing had ceased, and as the girls' eyes grew accustomed to the dim lights, they could see that a number of people sat on benches scattered about the place. On one wall hung a life-size portrait of a woman swathed in white veils all the way up to her eyes. Long, dark hair fell below her shoulders. Every face in the room was upturned, gazing at that portrait. Presently, the white-bearded man announced that all would have to help summon her spirit. Let us sit around this table, he intoned. Bess stood up to go forward, but Nancy pulled her back to the bench. Several others in the room arose and seated themselves on chairs around an oblong table. The old man took his place at the head of it, his back against the wall, a few feet beyond the portrait. let no one utter even a single sound," he requested. Silence fell upon the room. Nancy strained her eyes toward the table, watching intently. The white-bearded man sat perfectly still, looking straight ahead of him. Presently, a smile flickered across his face. "I feel that the spirits are approaching," he said in a scarcely audible voice. The words were hardly out of his mouth when 3 raps were heard. The old man, looking pleased, interpreted the sounds as meaning, "I am here," and invited the participants to ask the spirit for answers to their problems. He explained that 1 rap would mean yes, 2 no, and 5 would mean that danger lay ahead and the questioner should take every precaution to avoid it. For several seconds, no one spoke. The spirit gave 3 more sharp raps. Then, shyly, a woman at the table asked, "Will my child be ill long?" There came 2 sharp raps, and the questioner gave a sigh of relief. Another silence followed. Nancy felt Bess lean forward. Out of the corner of her eye, Nancy had noted that her friend was completely entranced by what was going on. Realizing that Bess was about to ask a question and fearful she might say something about Mrs. Putney's mystery, Nancy leaned over and whispered into her friend's ear, "Please, don't say anything." "Silence!" ordered the old man at the table. "Do you wish to drive away a friendly spirit? Ill luck follows him who disturbs the work of the spirit." As he spoke, the dim lights faded out. The room was in complete darkness. Suddenly, on the wall above that portrait, a faint glow appeared. It grew larger until the whole portrait seemed to be taking form. Bess and George, seated on either side of Nancy, huddled close to their friend. Bess nervously clutched at her friend's arm until Nancy winced from the pressure. The next moment, the 3 girls gasped. The portrait had come to life! The white-bearded man arose from his chair. "Good people," he said, "Amura has come to us to speak, but she will answer only the most important questions. Approach no closer, or her lifelike spirit will vanish upon the winds." "Oh, Amura, tell me, please," implored a young woman from a far corner of the room. "If Thomas comes back to me, shall I marry him?" Amura lowered her eyes and then nodded. "Oh, thank you, the young woman exclaimed, delight in her voice. Again, Nancy could feel that Bess was about to ask a question. Quietly, she laid a finger across the girl's lips. The light around the portrait began to fade. "Alas, the spirits are leaving us," the white-bearded medium interpreted. A few seconds later, the lights came on in the room. The old man, rising, made a low bow to the portrait, and then announced he regretted that the spirits had not been able to remain long enough to answer the questions of all those present. "Should you wish further knowledge," he said, "you may seek it, from Norman Towner, a photographer who has a direct connection with the spirit world. From time to time, messages will appear upon Mr. Towner's photographic plates. The man ushered his clients out of the room, but not before each of them had paused to look at Amura. George had the temerity to touch the canvas. There was no question but that it was only a portrait. Upon reaching the street, the three girls paused. "Wasn't it wonderful?" Bess exclaimed, adding that they should go at once to the studio of Norman Towner. "Nonsense," George said. "You've already spent $2 and got nothing out of it." "That's because Nancy she wouldn't let me ask a question," Bess argued. "Maybe I'll get an answer when I have my picture taken." To George's amazement, Nancy encouraged the visit. Not having seen the woman they had followed to the séance, Nancy felt she might have gone to the studio. By inquiring for directions from pedestrians, the girls arrived at length at a courtyard entered by means of a long passageway. At one side of it, a flight of iron stairs led to a carved door which bore the photographer's sign. "Up we go," George laughed, starting ahead. The studio, though old and a bit shabby, was well furnished. The proprietor, a short man with intent dark eyes and an artist's beret cocked over one ear, appeared so unusually eager that the girls wondered if he had many customers. Nancy inquired the cost of having individual photographs made. The price was reasonable, so the three friends decided upon separate poses. After the pictures had been taken, the photographer disappeared into his dark room. Soon he returned with 2 dripping plates. The pictures on them of George and Bess were excellent. To Bess's disappointment, however, not a trace of writing appeared on the glass. "Where is my friend's picture?" inquired George, referring to Nancy. The photographer returned to the dark room for it. When Nancy glanced at the wet plate, she inhaled sharply. Just beneath her photograph were the words, "Beware your client's request." "Spirit writing?" Bess gasped. "Yes. A message from someone in the other world is warning you not to go on with your work," the photographer said slowly, with an emphasis on the word warning. "Young lady, do not take the warning lightly." "No, I won't," said Nancy. She had just glimpsed in the photographer's dark room the woman they had seen on the plane. The next instant the door closed and the lights in the studio went out. The room, with its one window heavily curtained, was in complete darkness. A chill breeze suddenly wafted into the studio. Nancy felt a clammy hand brush across her face and fumble for her throat. Tune in next time for Chapter 4, A Strange Adventure.